Welcome back, everyone. I'm Melissa Heikkilä. I'm a tech reporter at Politico. And today's panel will be a very practical one. We have a great mix of companies here sharing their best practices on how they use AI technologies in their day-to-day operations. But before I introduce our lovely panelists, I would encourage you all to participate in our poll on our app. The question there is, what is the biggest obstacle for corporate implementation of AI? The options are expensive technology, lack of skills, cybersecurity threats, or regulation. And please do send in your questions as well for our panelists. Shall we dive in? Joining me here in Brussels are Abraham Liu, the Vice President of the European region for Huawei, and Sabine Everett, the Chief Information Officer for MEA for the Coca-Cola Company. And joining us online are Rainier Schladman, the Chief Executive Officer for Central and Eastern Europe of Philips. Hi. And Mariam Riyadi, the Chief Digital Officer of Suez. Hi.
Hi.
So shall we kick off by a very, very concrete, easy answer? How do you use AI in your day-to-day operations? Abraham, would you like to start?
Thank you very much, Melissa. Huawei, we are a ICT company. We provide the AI solution from what we call the full scenario, full stack AI chipsets. And we also use AI as to improve our efficiency, like our maintenance worldwide in 170 countries to the customer's network, used to be involving thousands of engineers of work. And now, because of the AI assist maintenance work, these numbers of headcount has been reduced dramatically. That's just one scenario for the company's efficiency improvement. Of course, the AI to every individual consumers. Now, these kind of smartphones can automatically, tell their objective is either it's a food or it's a portrait or whatever. And of course, the work of interpretation, can be, done by the AI machine. Like our working tools, we call WinInk. Since we are working internationally in over 170 countries, people can use your own language to talk to others, and the receiver of this message, will read this message in its own, home language. That is how I think the typical situation in Huawei, we use AI.
And Sabine?
Yeah, we have actually been doing AI for a while, and I think there are multiple applications of AI, but the one thing we're really looking at is building algorithms that drive advanced analytics. And why are we using that? Actually, we're trying to find, if we work with our customers, what the biggest drivers are for success and growth. And we call it revenue growth management, and it's something you typically would find in the press. We've done a big piece of work with consultants around that, but what we're doing now as an IT organization is actually rebuilding or re-engineering the algorithms that we have received from our consultants so that we can apply it on a constant basis in our business. And what we're trying to do is really, on a category per category basis, understand what the optimized assortment is. And we're even going a level down to the outlet level. So we have, obviously, bars and restaurants are big customers of ours. They have all gone through a very difficult period, as you know, over the past months with COVID. So what we're trying to understand now through algorithms is for each and every single of these outlets, as we call them, what is the best assortment at what time for that specific outlet. And therefore, we're not just using historical data, but now we're buying external data and we're trying to understand what events are happening around the space, social demographical information, traffic information, and all of that. And we're building that together so that we build kind of a win-win relationship with our customers that have suffered a lot. So we're helping them through the difficult times and through making sure that our salespeople understand what is best placed in these locations. We hope to build a win-win from there and make sure that they recover more easily.
Great. Mariam or Philip, would one of you want to jump in?
Yes, sure. Hi, everybody. Around the use of AI at Suez, most of the use case we have are today focused on performance, either around the optimization of our CapEx, maintenance CapEx. So, for example, we are predicting the best moment to renew our pipes before burst, thanks to AI. And also around always performance, we are using some alternative technologies within AI to also improve some of our processes. Some examples, we're using computer vision to identify automatically the non-conforming waste entering our incinerators. So this is something very key in terms of performance, because the non-conforming waste can cause a really large plant downturn, costing a lot of money. And we've been testing that in Northern Europe and in the UK. And we're also using the natural language processing technology to optimize the how our call centers are operated, how we need to manage the people in the call centers. So yes, very focused on performance. And we're in the process also of testing AI to the service of top line. For example, to use marketing automation for our e-commerce, for example, and also building new products and new solutions around AI and data to be sold to our customers.
Great. And how about you, Rainier? What do you do at Philips?
Well, quite a few things. So I recognize applying AI as part of the operations to make it more efficient, to make sure that you make CapEx decisions in time. I think one of the places where we see most of the applications is in healthcare, where you already have a transformation of applying digital technologies in healthcare, connecting patients with doctors at a distance where those doctors are normally not available. But for instance, also helping individuals who deal with chronic care conditions to have a high quality life by monitoring their condition at a distance. AI comes in to then track the progress, and also to make sure that when conditions deteriorate, you can intervene. And this can be both in a home setting, but for instance, also is applied a lot in the critical care environment. So you can imagine if you're in an ICU, in an intensive care unit, AI is already today watching and monitoring the progress of patients. And when patients move from a lower risk to a medium and a high risk area or situation, then there will be an intervention. And in that way, you can really improve the outcomes of care. This is just one use case. There's many, but maybe as an introduction, let's leave it at that for now.
Well, while I have you, maybe you could. We could continue on. How has the COVID-19 pandemic changed the way you use AI? Has it changed your strategy, or, yeah?
I would say it has only reconfirmed it. Due to COVID, you see an enormous need to separate patients from doctors because you want to avoid contamination. So some of the applications that we have, some of the connectivity that would allow a doctor to interact with a patient at a distance because the doctor wasn't there today, can be easily applied for different reasons in the COVID environment. But it's not just that, it goes much wider. If you just think about what happened when COVID started emerging and ICUs started getting overflown, patients need to be relocated to new hospitals. And one of the challenges in healthcare is that sometimes data is located in silos. So when patients move from one place to another, it is absolutely critical that the right patient information is available across the system. And what COVID did was that in a matter of weeks, which normally would have taken months or even years, a data platform was created that allowed different hospitals to get the information on these patients which were moved from one hospital to another. And in that matter of weeks, 95% of the hospitals were connected in the Netherlands. And that just shows you that sometimes it's not the technology that's the barrier, but it's really about the collaboration of different parties that are involved. So I would say it has just accelerated things in healthcare. And I think if you look at our consumer side of the business, you could argue the same, because of course the way that consumers are interacting with brands has completely changed. Not so much in the store anymore, but online. And of course, online also algorithms play an important role in buying behaviors, but also in enhancing a consumer experience of a product.
And how about Abraham? How has COVID changed your strategy?
I'm not very sure about the strategy level, but the pandemic, I think, have greatly speed up the adoption of AI. A typical example about the screen, pictures, images, screen, the scanning of the patient's lungs. Those kind. Previously, if it's manually or artificially diagnosis, it takes averagely 15 minutes for one piece of image, and then with the AI, with this kind of massive, quantity of pictures. I think it reduced from 15 minutes to 2 to 3 minutes, or even less. So that there is a very big impact, in the medical care, situation during the pandemic. Of course, each and every industry is, more and more using the online services, and a lot of content company, they are adopting the artificial intelligence computing power from the media like Facebook or TikTok or all this company to the frontliners, different vertical industries. I think the people see huge potentials from the adoption of the new technology like AI.
Yeah. Sabine?
Well, I think I'm very aligned with what was said from a Philips perspective as well. Huge shift in consumer shopper behavior. So the online business has grown drastically, and what we've noticed is that the people that have bought online for the first time keep on buying online. So that's very important, and I realize the algorithms are extremely important, be it from a marketing perspective, but even more so to make the shopper journey really convenient for people. And I think once you build that convenience, you really build something for people that is easy to come back to as well. So that's definitely an important one. Obviously, as I mentioned before, we work with our customers. We had serious impact in our HoReCa. We have built advertising that is allowing them now actually to add their personal advertising for their own outlets, their bars or their restaurants, to the bigger advertising that we build worldwide. So through technology, we allow to do things in a global standard manner, but at the same time, we're trying to be relevant in the community as well and allow the communities and the bars and the restaurants to advertise as part of our bigger advertising for their own business. And we're obviously using technology to make that all happen. Yeah.
And how about at Suez? Has the pandemic changed anything for you?
Sure. As many companies, we were very challenged on our profitability during the pandemic. So all the projects involving AI to the service of operations and performance were accelerated. So that's the first impact. Secondly, during this crisis, we managed to develop innovative product and services using the power of data to solve the crisis. So we launched recently a tracker of the pandemic evolution in wastewater. And this is an example of how this pandemic enabled also innovation enabled by data in a context of a crisis where you need to solve some problems in a very short time frame.
And well, yes,
if I may
go
add,
please.
I think for ordinary consumers, it's very important. I think during the pandemic we see that with the huge, massive volume of adoption, then the AI becomes more and more affordable. You see, so what Huawei strategy we call full scenario, full stack AI, which means to make the AI to be very affordable to the ordinary consumers. Like my watch on my hand, it can recognize more than 150 different kind of sports. So when I swim, it recognizes you are swimming. So this chipset inside is very affordable, very low power consumption. That's very obvious. And another point I want to add is all the AI adoption. Also request a very strong connectivity in terms of the ICT infrastructures. So the volume of the data has been increased dramatically worldwide. That's simply because people have to do more things online, like we are doing now. I think that is a mega trend. And then obviously the ICT infrastructure will play an even more important role in the coming years in terms of enabling the digital transformation of the vertical industry as well as the European Union's Green Deal.
Well, we mentioned the pandemic, expensive technology and data silos. What do you see as the biggest challenges for you using AI in your companies? You look like you have something.
Yeah, I think we have been working a lot with our partners, so our bottling partners, external companies, customers, etc. I think the challenge of the future is to really operate in a bigger ecosystem, and I think understanding where competitiveness is turning quickly into commodity, and opening up data sharing and even technology algorithms. For the broader world, thinking broader as well, because as a company, in the end, you're not just there for your own profit, but you're trying to have a bigger impact as it relates to the economy, the society, etc. So I think that is really important. We have a big example. It's maybe not really in AI, I would say, but our company actually has developed a plant bottle as well. Obviously, we have big teams working on sustainability, and the technology to build the plant bottle actually was a competitive advantage for us. But then we thought it's crucial for other businesses as well to take on the technology, so we leave a better place behind. So we have opened up that technology even for our competitors and enabled them to use that. And now you see the technology used not just in beverages, but also in cosmetics, etc. So I guess the broader thinking of ecosystems and what it could mean as within an ecosystem, not just your own company, your customers, but really competitors, stakeholders, even Europe as an institution and local authorities as well, is like, how can you join forces to apply AI, share data, share algorithms, share technology to leave a better place behind?
Yeah. Let's take Rainier. Please.
Yeah. If you allow me, I would very much like to build on that, because I think it is precisely as was just said, right? It's about building on the ability that AI can bring to improve the lives of people. So that can be indeed for a company like Coca-Cola or Huawei or for Philips. And for instance, if you look at now in the pandemic, tracking and tracing patients at home and identifying when certain symptoms are indicating that someone has a higher risk of having COVID. And those are things that bring good. And I think they're extremely valuable to also to make this under control. At the same time, there's a lot of also other concerns regarding AI. Is it taking over automatic decision making? What about the data privacy? And how do you deal with those type of aspects? And I think that is also a very important part where companies have a role to play, to be transparent about where they're applying AI and how they're using it. And an ethical way of using AI. But I also see a role for governments and the European Union to also make sure that this fits well in the frame of data privacy and security. And in our case also, of course, as part of the medical community. So there's that balance. And I think there's a big role to play also to educate, therefore, consumers and patients about what it means to share the data. There can be concern about what if someone else gets my data. But of course, in healthcare, there's a lot of opportunity also if you share the data, because if there's large amounts of data, algorithms can be improved. And that means that we can tailor treatment methods and tailor those in such a way that they have a better outcome. And that means a better outcome for a certain population of patients. But at the same time, also having more tailored approaches, because of course, with AI and if you use data, you can actually tailor medical treatment to the individual patient. But it's constantly is this balance between using the benefits of what AI can bring versus how do you then deal with questions like privacy and security.
Miriam, do you have anything to add?
Yes, fully in line with what was said. I would say that our biggest challenge as Suez is to do AI at scale. And it's very important for us to work on the enablers that will make Suez a data-driven company to be able to really have powerful algorithms with a high impact. So we've been working on the enablers to make Suez a data-driven company, meaning key roles around the quality of data in the business units to guarantee that we have a good amount of data of good quality. Also, we've been working on the scalability around the data platforms. What platforms need to be put in common in the group, what needs to be local. So there is a huge work around data governance, data quality, data platforms that is being done today, and that is really key for us to do AI at scale at Suez.
Abraham, how about at Huawei?
Well, obviously, I fully agree with our friend from France. That so the data ownership is one of the very key important topic which will impact the development of AI, because we understand very well, according to the GDPR, every individual person should have the ownership and full control of its own data. And then with the development of 5G and AI in the coming years, it will expand it to the industry. So every company should have the full ownership of your own industrial data as well. I think that very much has been emphasized by Commissioner Breton in different occasions. And in the future, every country should have the full control of its own data as a digital sovereignty. That's a very important layer of the digital sovereignty, but that's not all, not the full picture, because the data has been supported by the infrastructure. So the diversity of the infrastructure is another key topic of the digital sovereignty. And nevertheless, I think I fully agree with being that the ecosystem, global collaboration is the key. The ICT industry or the AI is actually the most globalized, coordinated industry. So I think people are listening to this should seriously look into what is happening. Where we are talking about artificial intelligence, and there are more and more artificial interference to this global supply chain, which happening on Huawei in this case. I think that will more or less in the future greatly reshape what will be the global ecosystem will be. The global collaboration will be. We should not take this as for granted. Which in the past many years, 30 years or 20 years in Europe, Huawei's cornerstone of development is to have the respect the law as a certainty of development. And now more and more politics or artificial interference to the global supply chain purposely, then that will have a big question mark to the industry, not only the companies from Europe, but also even the ones from America.
You mentioned a very hot buzzword there, digital sovereignty. And as we all know, the Commission has this grand vision of creating a single market for industrial data that'll allow businesses to share data more fluently, and that'll fuel more AI innovations. But one of the big questions I have is how to do that in practice. How to encourage companies like yourselves to share data, to buy into that vision. Do you have any thoughts on that? Sabine?
I have some thoughts on that, but we are actually, if you look at our own environment, so we're the Coca-Cola company owning a brand, and then we have franchise bottlers that are actually producing and distributing our products. So, and these are different legal entities, but we operate together because obviously they need the brands and we need someone to execute it in the market. And it starts with even working together within that framework. We've seen big successes of data sharing, and we do everything. When we talk about consumers, obviously, it's all consented and all of that. We're making sure that we're completely compliant. But then we talk about really business data around, the outlets we have, customer information or things we can share that help us grow the business together. But you need very clear data sharing frameworks for that. And what's been clear for me even in our company, just even not in the ecosystem, when you do AI, when you do big data projects and all of that, it's always starting from a business problem, from a use case. And I've seen successful data sharing within the boundaries, of course, where the business case or the use case to achieve something together was very clear. And then the conversation becomes actually very, very, very easy. But as long as you load data in your data lake for the sake of loading, or you share data for the sake of sharing, that's not bringing anyone further. So having the conversation on the business problem you're trying to solve and what you're trying to achieve as both parties is a good foundation actually to build a data sharing framework.
Rainier, you were nodding there. Do you have something to add?
Yes, I fully share the point of view around having a clear use case. That's for sure. And I think that if we want to encourage sharing of data and so on, we need to enable our company to become data rich. I think today the pure tech companies using personal data are data rich, but we need to make our more industrial companies rich in terms of data, which means breaking silos, working on the enablers I was mentioning, quality of data, governance, platforms, to make, first of all, our companies rich in terms of good quality of data and break silos in the companies, but also, as you mentioned, with your suppliers, with your retailers, and so on. And this is something, if you have a good quality of data, the good technology framework, and the good use case, you can, for sure, encourage sharing of data and so on. But you need those foundations to build on them.
And how would you suggest breaking those silos?
Breaking those silos, to do that, first of all, you need to prioritize the topics. You won't implement all those data governance roles and platforms and data catalogs for everything in a group. You need to prioritize the key business processes where you want that to be implemented. So there is a question of prioritization and a question of governance and discipline. Okay, this is a core process. We need a high quality of data to perform those use cases. And we need, to work on this technology platform. Maybe it's not the one that I've chosen locally, but this is to break the silos in the group and so on. So it's really about those enablers and some discipline around that.
And Rainier, do you have something to add?
Yeah, so apologies, Miriam. We started at the same time, and I always have learned that ladies go first.
You gave me.
No, I think one of the elements is that of course algorithms become better when you have more data. So and I think within the EU with the GDPR, there's a good framework of how do we deal with data in an ethical way to first of all respect the individual, but still being able to use that data. And I think if we get a bit better at sharing the data, then I think we can fully leverage the potential. Because as I was giving a few examples before, the more data you have, the better the algorithms that. And the better the algorithms that, the better you can improve people's lives and manage things like an outbreak of a virus, and manage people in an ICU, but also manage people with a chronic disease. And unfortunately today, if you're 65 years or older, you have a big likelihood of having a chronic disease, which is something you have to learn with. But then with technology and with algorithms, you can really make sure that you can avoid falling into an adverse effect. And I think that's a great opportunity we can still leverage more. And then if you combine it indeed with the right, let's say, privacy framework, and you can also do it in a way that we feel comfortable with. And I think then there's an enormous differentiation to be achieved within the European Union to move that forward. So lots of opportunity, but we need to make sure that we fully understand the consequences.
Great. Before I go into audience questions, do you have something to add to this?
I mean, we can learn from history. In our ICT industry, for example, it takes many years, to have the worldwide one single standardization, which is 4G or 5G we are talking about. But long time ago, it was not like that. But this kind of global collaboration in the ICT industry has bring down the cost of the consumer electronics and also the tariff for data, dramatically, very affordable. I think that's the history. And now, with the U.S. administration is more and more weaponize its dominance of technology, then the global supply chain becomes at risk. Imagine what is good for the American companies if China obliged to develop alternatives within 3 or 5 years in the semiconductor sector, which U.S. is currently dominating. And then there are also lessons in history. They have blocked certain technology and then just take years for China to develop that alternative. But for the consumers, finally, people will have to pay for all the costs. Now, like the U.S. consumers pay almost 3 times of what the European people are paying for the same amount of quota of data. Just because of the competition or the diversity of the vendor is not there. I think what is happening, I think, surrounded Huawei, no matter its ICT infrastructure, 5G or AI, I think I would like to take this opportunity to remind the policymakers and also industry players, this world, prosperity of this world is heavily relying on the global collaboration. We have many, many common enemies like the COVID-19, like climate change, create artificial conflict between people, between different companies, does not help at all.
Well, building on that, actually, we have a great question from Ivy Tang, a PhD researcher at the University of Warwick. She asks, how has the current political tension among major powers affected your AI strategy? Maybe you could start.
No, obviously, the key impact from the current geopolitical conflict is the semiconductor industry supply chain might be disrupted artificially. In that case, all the company, not only Huawei, relying on this global collaboration, will have to think about alternative. And then people more and more think about digital sovereignty. I think this is not good for the American companies, for the incumbent dominant power, because you create competition. I think this has been clearly, repeatedly mentioned by the Industrial Association of the Semiconductor. And that's the number one, I think, impact to our industry from the current geopolitical collaboration. And the decoupling of the market as well will again increase the final cost or the tariff to the end users.
Sabine?
I think the situation at Coke is a little different. So obviously it's an American brand, but our company is extremely locally anchored, and we were talking about that before the panel started. We have our bottling partners that are working locally. Execution, distribution, production, all of that is happening locally. So we have to be extremely relevant and solving business problems that are specific to the market. So we would apply AI in China, and we might apply AI in Europe differently, depending on the maturity of the business, the operating model as well. Do you do direct business, indirect business, etc.? So it's actually fairly adapted. Now, I guess that if we talk about the big powers, what we obviously feel is if there is going to be that bigger power play, the availability of 5G at a certain point in time is going to be crucial if you want to take use of industrial data. We're on the marketing side. Actually, the data we have is small compared to what a production entity or autonomous cars and autonomous ships and etc. can use and need actually to be operational. So I guess that is going to become important, and we will feel when that is available that we can exploit it. So we hope that is going to land in a good place at a certain point in time, and that Europe actually can most probably, as I know they're trying now, play a forefront role in making that happen.
Great. Let's give the floor to our panelists online. Miriam, would you like to start?
Yes, can you just repeat the question, because there was a problem of connection, so I couldn't hear the question.
Absolutely. The question is, how has the current political tension among major powers affected your current AI strategy?
Okay, I would give an answer about the positive impact of, I would say, the European politics around this topic. So as mentioned by Erika, there is a will to federate something around industrial data, IoT-based data in Europe, to have some maybe more local technology in this area, and this is something we are looking at very closely. Because we think that this alignment and maybe political willingness around this topic could be good for a European-based industrial company, and maybe could give some room to another new player, maybe in this type of use case around industrial use case, performance use case, and so on. So I would say, from my point of view, it's more this alignment around the industrial data, IoT-based data, that could be very fruitful for our business.
And how about at Philips? How do geopolitics play into your strategy?
Well, I would like to build on what Sabine was saying. Also, Philips is a company that has such a global presence, so we feel very connected, and we're very ingrained in the local environments. So if you link that to AI, I think one of the things that, of course, could help is if we would create more standards to allow it to use data in a better way and exchange. So I think the collaboration part, and I can't remember who mentioned collaboration here, but I think in the end, that of course will help progress innovation, and also progress in getting those algorithms to such a level that they can actually really do good. So I think there's a lot about cooperation. And I think, like I said, and then the standardization part is a critical element, because if you don't standardize data, of course we can find solutions to then find a way around and to make sure that data is then comparable, but that costs so much time and effort. If we could agree on some of the standards, that would really, really help. By the way, the same would go around how do you deal with privacy and security. There's so many different rules and regulations around it if you go from country to country, that has some further alignment in this field would certainly help a company like my own.
Great. We have just under 2 minutes left, so I'd like each one of you to give one tip you want, or one message you want to convey to policymakers trying to regulate AI right now. You have approximately 30 seconds each. Abraham.
Thank you. I think Europe played a key role in the current geopolitical situation, where multilateralism has never been so important than ever, and many things in our industry is relying on this. And then AI or the 5G, all this technology played a key role as an enabler to the vertical industry. That is where your economic competition is about. So we look forward that the policymakers to give us, more certainty. Europe has a special, unique role to play in this case.
Sabine?
Yeah, I think I'm not going to repeat 5G. I think 5G is the basic for our innovation. It's actually your innovation highway. So I think that is important. I guess the whole conversation around data collaboration, data sharing is also an important one. So I think we need a framework around standardization, but not just standardization, but also the sharing, what is possible, and get clarity around that. And I guess one of the things that was even mentioned in some of the the Digital Act and all of that is that I think big companies have a lot of backbone, I would say, to do a lot of things, and they have different means. I think it would be great if we find a way to connect maybe bigger companies with smaller and medium-sized companies as well, so that we can actually uplift them and bring them along the way in the whole AI space.
Rainier and Mary, I'm so sorry, our time is up, but please join the conversation on Twitter and on our app. And thank you so much for your time. It was a really interesting conversation and very valuable insights. And yeah, our next panel starts at, when does it start? 2:45. Thank you.